Hi, this is the video tutorial for 1.3.3 Constraining a Sketch Part 3. We're going to make another 10-sided concave polygon, but this one you need to pay a little bit closer attention to the way that I create it. I'm not worried so much about the length of the lines that you're creating, just the direction that they are going and whether they're angled or straight, that type of thing. So your final sketch should look very, very similar to mine. Does not need to be exact, but it should be very similar. So we're going to start off like usual. We'll make sure our view cube is oriented properly. We're going to go up to our data panel. We want to make sure we have our Unit 1 project folder open. You should see your Part 1 and Part 2 completions there. We're going to go up to File. We're going to say Save. We're going to call this 1.3.3 Part 3 and click Save. Now we can go ahead and close our data panel. We're going to go down to Document Settings, and we're going to make sure that this is in millimeters. It's in inches right now. We're going to change it to millimeters, and I'm going to click OK. Now we're going to create new component. Click OK. And we're going to create a sketch. We're going to go down to our origin in our browser. We're going to choose the XZ plane. Okay. I'm going to zoom a little bit so that it's a little bit smaller. Whoops, it went back out. Hey, there we go. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to do 10 lines, and it's very important to do the lines in the order that I say them because there's going to be directions later that are going to be based on the different lines that we're talking about. So I'm going to start off now. It's best practice, I've talked about this before, to try to create your design centered on the origin point. On this particular design, I'm intentionally not going to do that because I'm going to show you using constraints how you can get it over there in the event that it did not happen. So I'm going to start with line 1. I'm going to go just below the x-axis. I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag that line over to the left. Again, the length of the line does not matter right now. We are going to, in part 4, we will put actual dimensions on and make the line specific sizes. And I'm going to click once. When I click once, I'll see our blue line. You'll also still have your line tool activated, so no matter which direction you point, it's ready to draw another line. If you accidentally click twice on here when you got to the end point, it will end, but your line tool is still active. It's just waiting for you to click someplace to create a new line. So in order to continue, because we want all of our lines to connect, you need to go make sure you're on the end point of line 1 and click. And then when you start dragging up, you'll see the line creating again. So we're going to create line 2 just by dragging up a little bit. We're going to create line 3 by dragging to the right. And line 4, we're going to kind of go up and diagonal. Line 4, I'll click. Line 5 is going to go, we're going to drag straight on up. Line 6 is going to be slightly down and slightly diagonal. Okay, line 7. This is where I'm going to slow down a little bit because line 7, we want to make sure it is parallel with line 5. So when I do that, I'm going to start dragging down. You'll notice that the program automatically puts in, you can see the two lines, the two parallel lines there, the little light blue lines, saying that it's automatically going to put that constraint there. So I can click there. Then I'm going to right click and select OK. So you can see I have my parallel constraint there. In the event that the program did not automatically create those constraints for you, that's okay. You can go on up to the Constraints tab, click on the parallel, click on lines 7 and 5, and it will be placed for you then. Okay, continuing on with line 8. I go back up to my line tool. I'm going to click on the end point of line 7. And I'm going to draw a diagonal line down. And this one needs to be perpendicular to line 4. I'm just going to drag down slightly, angle slightly diagonal. I'm going to click, and I'm going to right click and select OK. This one did not automatically place a constraint, so I'm going to need to go up to my constraints, and I'll select the perpendicular constraint. I'll click line 8 and line 4. Now I have my perpendicular constraint there, and that's line 8. Line 9, I'm going to select my line tool. Line 9, I'm going to select the end of line 8, and I'm just going to go straight on out a bit and click. I'm going to right click and click OK. Now in this one, I do not want this perpendicular constraint. So I'm going to left click, right click, and delete that perpendicular constraint. I want this line 9 to be parallel with line 3. So I'm going to go back up here to my constraints, click on parallel, and click on line 9 and then line 3. Okay, and then I'm going to right click and select OK. One line left to make. It's going to be line 10. This is simply connecting line 9 to line 1. When you are finished, you should have something that looks kind of like a steamboat, and it should be shaded blue because we should have all of our lines connected to each other. If it is not shaded blue, that means you did not make a full connection somewhere. You need to go back and kind of figure out where that is. At this point, we're going to go ahead and click Finish Sketch, because I want to be able to show you how you can reopen the sketch when you need to make edits, which is what we're going to do at this point. So our sketch is closed, so we can't do anything with it. We can't add any more lines to it, do anything unless we edit the sketch. We're going to go down to our timeline. You should have one component on your timeline. It should consist of one sketch. So you're going to right click and then go to Edit Sketch. Now our sketch is open again for us to be able to make some changes to. What we're going to do first is I'm going to make lines 2 and 10 parallel. So I'm going to go up to my constraints. I'm going to click on my parallel constraint. I'm going to click on line 2, and I'm going to click on line 10. Now right click, select OK. Line 6 needs to always be parallel with the x-axis, no matter what changes we make to anything else. There's two ways we can do that. We can use parallel constraint, or we can use the horizontal constraint. I'm going to go ahead and use the horizontal constraint because that's going to be the same thing. If it stays horizontal, it'll always be parallel. So I'm going to go on up, click my horizontal, and click line 6. Right click and select OK. 5 and 7, we want lines 5 and 7 to always be the same length. We want them to have equal lengths with each other, always. No matter what changes we make, they should always be the same length. So we're going to go up to our constraints and click on equal. I'm going to click line 7 and line 5. Then I'm going to right click and select OK. And you can see now that they are the same length. Now, I want to make lines 9 and 3 so that they move together. So if I move line 9, line 3 is not moving, but they need to be. So we're going to go up to our constraints. We're going to choose collinear. I'm going to click on 9, and then I'm going to click on 3. I'm going to right click and select OK. And you can see now, if I move 9, 3 moves with it. Okay. Do this. So let's see, will it let me? Yeah. And what I'm going to do, you can see how it was kind of out of shape here. It looked kind of funky. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to click on that end point where 8 and 9 meet. I'm going to click and I'm going to kind of drag it in this way a little bit. So it kind of looks a little bit better. Okay. So if that's happened to you, just go ahead and click that end point and move it on in. Okay, so now we need to take a look at this. There's some constraints we need to fix. So line 1 and 5 should not be perpendicular to each other, or should not be constrained to be perpendicular to each other. So I'm going to left click, right click, and delete that. Notice 1 and 5 both disappeared. However, I do want 3 and 5 to be perpendicular. So I'm going to go up to my perpendicular constraint. I'm going to click on line 3, and I'm going to click on line 5. And I'm going to select OK. Okay, let me see now. What do we have here? We have our equals. We have that. Okay, the last thing I want to, let me double check. Let me make sure. So at this point, I also want to make 8 and 4 equal. So I'm going to go up to my equal. I want them to be the same. And I'm going to right click and select OK. Alrighty. Now the next thing we're going to do is we are going to put a line down that connects 1 and 6. We're going to use a construction line. If you remember, construction lines are used to help guide the creation of other features. So we're going to put a construction line in to help create a line of symmetry. We're going to divide the shape into 2 equal parts. So to do that, I'm going to go up to my line tool. And then I'm going to go over here to my sketch palette. My first option here is line type. And I want to select the one that says construction. So I'm at line type construction. You'll notice when you select it, it turns blue. I'm going to take my cursor down to line 1, and I'm going to drag it along line 1 until I get that triangle shape there. When I have that triangle shape, that means I am at the center point, or the midpoint of that line. So I'm going to click, and then I'm going to drag up to line 6 until I get the same thing. I'll get that triangle, and I'm going to click. So that tells me I'm now at the midpoint of line 1 and the midpoint of line 6. Next thing I need to do, because this is kind of a crooked line, it's diagonal, I want it to be a straight line, I'm going to enforce a vertical constraint onto the construction line. So I'm going to go up here to my constraints, click my horizontal vertical, and then I'm going to click my construction line. I can right click and select OK. There is one more construction line I want to, oh wait, almost forgot. We also need to remember we purposely made this so it was not centered on the origin, so I can show you how to put it centered on the origin. That's what we're going to do now. We're going to go up to our constraints. We're going to use our coincident constraint. We're going to click on the origin, and then we're going to click on the midpoint of the construction line on line 1. And it shifted everything over, and we are now, our line 1 is now centered on that origin. I can click, right click, and OK. Now I'm going to do one more construction line, and it's going to be over here on the left edge. So I'm going to go up, select my line tool, make sure that my construction line type is selected. And I'm going to do the same thing on my left edge. I'm going to go until I find that midpoint right there. I'm going to click. I'm going to drag this out a bit, not all the way to the center, but a good amount. And I'm going to click, right click, and select OK. Now I want to deactivate my construction line. Otherwise, everything I do from this point on will be a construction line, which means I won't be able to extrude it or do anything else with it. So I'm going to deactivate that. And notice now my line types, there's nothing highlighted. So I'm good to go. Now, we drew this construction line here so that we could line up. We're going to draw a circle, and we're going to line that circle up. And that's what we're going to use this line for. So I'm going to go up to my circle tool. I'm going to do center diameter circle. I'm going to come down in this general area, and I'm just going to draw a small circle. Drag it out. Doesn't have to be very large. It's a small one. Right click and click OK. Again, we're not worried about diameter right now. Now I'm going to line this circle up so it lines up with the point where line 3 and 4 meet. And then I'm going to line it up so it's on this line here, on the midpoint line. So first thing I'm going to do is go up to my horizontal vertical constraint. I'm going to click this point right here where 3 and 4 line up. Do not click line 3 and do not click line 4. You want to click that point where they connect. And then you want to click on the circle. Notice it shifted it over so it's lined up. Right click, select OK. Now we're going to go to our tangent constraint. We're going to click on our circle, and then we are going to click on our construction line here. And it shifted everything so that it's now lined up so that it's centered. The bottom of the circle is centered with that line. Now I want to create this identical circle on this side of the shape. I don't need to worry about doing another construction line and making sure I have the sizes and everything perfect. I'm going to go on up. I'm going to select my mirror tool. You can select it as an icon up here on the Create panel, or you can open up the drop-down box and select it there. Okay. So when I have my mirror box open, my object that I'm going to select is going to be the circle. The mirror line I'm going to select is this construction line going down the center. And now it brought it on over where it needs to be. If the shape is slightly off one way or the other, or if you just want to make sure it is exactly lined up perfectly, you can go on up to your constraints, click on equal, click on 9 and 3, and now it's making those lines equal, so it's going to make sure that these are in the correct places. Okay, almost there for this part. Now, I just want to double check. Yep. Okay, and yep, that is the end of part 3. So at this point, what you are going to do, you're going to click Finish Sketch. You're going to make sure that this is saved, and this is what you will upload into Canvas for me.